Take a deep breath and let your thoughts begin to drift. Tonight, we're setting sail not across rough seas, but through the quiet corridors of time. You're invited aboard a vessel not as it ended, but as it lived. Before the name Titanic became etched into history books, it was simply a marvel and enormous floating world, full of people, stories, and routines. A place of quiet conversations in corridors, polished boots on promenades, and porcelain cups clinking softly in the afternoon light. We won't speak of tragedy, only of life, the gentle rhythm of daily tasks, the subtle hum of engines far below, and the echo of footsteps in long, carpeted hallways. So, if you're comfortable, imagine yourself aboard the RMS Titanic, just days into its maiden voyage. The sky is clear above the Atlantic, the sea stretches endlessly around you. And the ship, this towering, elegant creation, moves forward with confidence and calm. Let us begin with the day-to-day world of second-class passengers. Neither lavish nor meager, but dignified, practical, and quietly hopeful. Imagine waking to the soft creak of wood and the muffled sound of footsteps in the hallway. The bed is firm but clean, a crisp white coverlet folded with care. The cabin, though compact, is tidy, paneled with polished wood, its brass fittings glinting dimly in the morning light. There's a small porcelain basin in the corner, and the faint scent of seawater, soap, and varnish lingers in the air. This is second class aboard the Titanic. You rise, carefully adjusting your collar, perhaps brushing the faintest wrinkle from your jacket. The corridor outside is narrow, but well kept, lit with electric lamps whose glow is soft and steady. It's quiet, only the low hum of the engines far below reminds you that you are not on land. Down the hall, the second-class dining saloon awaits. It is no grand ballroom, but it is refined, high ceilings, crisp white linens, and sturdy oak chairs. The stewards are courteous, never hurried, always attentive. They glide between tables, pouring hot tea, and bringing plates of buttered toast, boiled eggs, and smoked kippers. Conversations are muted, polite, formal, and restrained. A gentleman in his 50s reads a folded newspaper. A mother adjusts her son's collar. There's a soft clatter of cutlery, the occasional cough, and the rhythmic clink of cups being gently placed back into saucers. As the morning unfolds, passengers scatter across the ship. Some wander to the second-class library, a warm space filled with mahogany bookshelves and quiet contemplation. Others stroll along the promenade deck, coats buttoned against the ocean breeze, eyes scanning the horizon. There are letters to write, to post when the ship docks. There are books to read, games of chess to play, and endless hours of gentle leisure. Even the children, though rarely rowdy, find their joys in simple games and hushed laughter under parental watch. In the afternoon, tea is served, a comforting ritual. Plates of sponge cake, jam tarts, and warm scones appear. The tea is always hot, always fresh. The hours pass slowly, softly measured by meal bells, the shift of sunlight, and the occasional toll of the ship's clock. At night, the dining saloon transforms again, lightly more formal. Ladies wear gloves and high collars. Gentlemen speak in tones barely above whispers. There is roast beef, stewed vegetables, and syllabub for dessert. No orchestras here. Just the hush of conversation and the distant chime of silver service. Then, slowly, the corridors dim. The ship's gentle sway rocks you towards sleep. Your cabin is quiet. The world outside, vast, dark, unknowable, seems distant. Inside, though, all is still. The Titanic breathes gently in the night. Imagine yourself in a crisp, navy blue stewardess uniform. Hair neatly pinned, hands folded gently before you, your eyes steady and alert. You are Violet Jessop, and the year is 1912. You are 24 years old, though your eyes suggest someone older, someone who has seen more than her years would suggest. Already, this is not your first voyage. Born in Argentina to Irish immigrants, Violet had been familiar with both resilience and illness from an early age. As a child, she survived a severe bout of tuberculosis at a time when few did. Doctors doubted she would live, but she did. Her family returned to England after her father's death, and by her late teens, Violet was working first as a stewardess on ocean liners, a job considered somewhat unglamorous, often reserved for widows or older women. But Violet, young and composed, carried herself with quiet authority. She was selected, more than once, not only for her professionalism, but for her calm demeanor. The Titanic was to be her latest assignment, another in a growing list of crossings. She boarded the ship in Southampton, assigned to second class, tending to families, older couples, and solo travelers seeking new beginnings. Each day she moved about the ship, unseen by most, yet integral. Making beds, arranging flowers, guiding passengers through their routines, comforting nervous travelers during the night. The days blurred in quiet repetition, meals, tea service, linens, soft-spoken instructions. She would later write in her memoirs that the ship was a world of utter stillness, broken only by the soft pulse of machinery beneath her feet, but Violet's life was one of strange patterns. Just a year before, she had been aboard the Olympic, Titanic's nearly identical sister ship, when it collided with a British naval cruiser. Though the damage was substantial, the ship stayed afloat. Violet remained composed. And just 2 years later, she would find herself aboard the Britannic, another grand liner, this time serving as a nurse during the Great War. That ship struck a mine in the Aegean Sea. Violet survived again, though she would sustain a head injury diving from the lifeboat. 3 ships, 3 disasters. And Violet lived through them all, but for now, let us return to her aboard the Titanic. The voyage is still young, the sea calm. Violet moves quietly through the corridor, checking on elderly passengers, refilling water jugs, smoothing pillows. There is no fear, no premonition, only the rhythmic thrum of the engines. Only the hushed murmur of a floating city, carrying thousands toward a future none can yet see. She was, as many would later call her, unsinkable, but at the time, she was simply doing her job, with poise, with purpose, and with extraordinary calm. Imagine yourself wandering alone through the ship. Not lost, but exploring. The hallways grow quiet after dark. The carpets soften your steps. The air smells faintly of fresh varnish and pressed linen. And here, without the bustle of the day, you begin to notice things. Small, intentional things, details meant not to dazzle, but to speak, softly, of elegance and meaning. The Titanic was not only an engineering feat, it was a museum at sea, an ocean-bound expression of Edwardian taste, artistry, and ambition. There were cherubs carved into stairway railings, small figures you might not notice unless you leaned in. Their expressions were serene, their wings curled gently behind them, frozen forever in polished oak. On the grand staircase, yes, that staircase, there stood an ornate clock, flanked by figures representing honor and glory. But only a few lingered long enough to see the quiet pride etched in their faces. Walls weren't merely paneled, they were sculpted. Light fixtures weren't simply glass, they mimicked flowering vines, with brass tendrils reaching up like ivy in bloom. In the first-class smoking lounge, the ceiling was coffered, and the walls styled in the Georgian period, a nod to Britain's architectural past. Yet just a deck below, in third class, the dining saloon offered bare pine benches and linoleum floors, a stark but deliberate contrast. Even that design choice whispered something about class, order, and the quiet hierarchies that traveled invisibly alongside the passengers. Then there were rooms few ever saw, the Turkish bath, for example, a space of near-mythic luxury. Inside, the walls shimmered with pale green tiles. The room glowed faintly under amber light, filtered through stained glass. There were cooling rooms, steam rooms, and marble foot basins. The bath was not simply functional, it was spiritual. A place for reflection, rest, and ritual. Designed to evoke faraway cultures, imagined or real. There were electric lift elevators, something rare at the time. And hidden behind polished walls, ducts and mechanical systems whispered through vents. The Titanic was both old-world opulence and cutting-edge technology, fused quietly into one. Even the menus were thoughtful compositions. Watercress sandwiches, poached salmon, wine jellies with chantilly cream. Each meal an edible performance of status, taste, and expectation. And printed in delicate type, the day's date and the ship's crest, small reminders that even food could be ritual. Some say the Titanic was doomed by hubris, perhaps, but before it sank, it was a floating expression of a world at its peak confidence, a world that believed in permanence, in hierarchy, and in the quiet power of design. As you trace your fingers along the railings, imagine the dozens of artisans whose work remains invisible today, whose carvings, mosaics, and subtle ornament vanished beneath the waves. They built a world meant to move across the sea, and though the ship is gone, the intention, the detail, the artistry live on, in quiet memory. Imagine standing still for a moment and listening not to the sea, but to the layers of human life unfolding above and below you. On the Titanic, class was not merely a category, it was a world. A first-class passenger might never lay eyes on a third-class corridor. A steward might walk 50,000 steps and speak barely 100 words. Each level moved to its own rhythm. And yet they floated together, in the same steel shell, under the same stars. In first class, life was styled after the finest country homes of England. You could stroll through a reading room lined with mahogany, sip sherry in a palm court bathed in sunlight through glass ceilings, or dine in a restaurant modeled after the Ritz in Paris. The conversations were careful, clipped, and low. Polished silverware, tailored gloves, and menus in French. Gentlemen spoke of business ventures and inheritances. Ladies planned shopping excursions in New York. It was a calm confidence rooted not just in money, but in certainty. Just below, second class was more modest, but dignified. School teachers, clerks, retired couples, people neither poor nor privileged. Their cabins were smaller, but still clean and warm. The food simpler, but satisfying. There was conversation about new lives in America, of opportunity, of letters home. The air was hopeful. Then, below, third class. Steerage, as it was called. Long shared dormitories, communal washrooms. Meals served in big halls with wooden benches. The air smelled of iron and cabbage, and shoes often carried the damp of the deck. But listen closely, there is laughter here. Children running between legs, grandmothers pulling shawls tight. Young men telling stories in Irish, Norwegian, Italian, Polish. There is music, always music. A fiddle tucked under someone's bed, a mouth organ played in rhythm to the gentle roll of the waves. They danced, they sang. They dreamed of farms, jobs, marriages, land. Their America was still ahead, and though they lacked the marble and velvet of the upper decks, they had something else: closeness, community. Every class aboard Titanic had its silences and its rituals. First class had luxury. Third class had resilience. Second class walked the line between, but no class could stop time. And as night fell, as the ship hummed softly into the horizon, the differences faded. Doors shut, lights dimmed, dreams floated gently above the rocking of the sea. 3 classes, 1 ship, and a quiet world sailing steadily through the dark. And so, we drift once more above the Atlantic. The Titanic, still whole in our memory, moves steadily beneath us. The decks are quiet, the lamps dimmed. The sky, a soft dome of stars. Before it became a legend, the Titanic was simply a place. A world of brushed coats and polished shoes, steaming teapots and hushed conversations. A place where people read, worked, whispered, hoped. Its halls echoed with more than footsteps, they carried the rhythm of thousands of individual lives. Some chasing dreams, some escaping old ones. Some seeking comfort, some simply passing time. In the second-class cabins, linen was folded carefully. In the first-class parlors, someone turned the last page of a novel. And deep below, in third class, a lullaby hummed softly, just above the sound of engines. History often remembers the iceberg, the alarm, the lifeboats. But tonight, you've remembered something else. You've remembered the stillness before. The calm routines, the gentle formalities, the hidden artistry. And the invisible people who carried it all forward with grace. Let that be what stays with you. Let your thoughts settle now, like the ship's anchor resting quietly on the seafloor. Let sleep come gently, as it might have in a tidy cabin rocked by the ocean sway. You are not aboard the Titanic. You are safe, still, at rest, and the only voyage ahead is the one into dreams. Good night.